Has the need for safety now been confused with some unnecessary suffering? Today, I spoke to a woman named Jordan Evans. She traveled from Arkansas to Montreal. She got a government exemption for family reunification to come to Canada. She didn't break any rules. She said her room was dirty. She had to wait hours for a reservation. She couldn't get food. She couldn't get water. When she did finally arrive, it was cold. It was bad. And then she said this: most people who are listening to her story have no pity. They say she's just whining. She should have just stayed home and she should stop complaining. But she's not breaking the law. She's following the rules. So are these quarantine hotels safe? Well, the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security are looking into that question. 4 members today requested at the meeting to study safety at the hotels. Should these hotels and these measures be suspended? Let's bring in MPs to discuss this. Greg Fergus is the Treasury Board Parliamentary Secretary. Shannon Stubbs is the Conservative Party's public safety critic. And Jack Harris is the NDP's public safety critic. Good to have all of you back on the program on a Monday. Shannon Stubbs, let me just start with you. Your party has long called for tougher border measures. Well, the Liberals came up with the quarantine hotels. They're here now. Now your party doesn't want them. What's wrong with the idea behind the quarantine hotel system?
Well, of course, Evan, you're right. You'll recall that early on last year, we called for strong action on the borders. And of course, the Liberals delayed and dithered and took a long time to finally put any restrictions whatsoever in. The issue now is the protection of the security and safety of individual Canadians who are in those quarantine facilities. To be clear, those are federal. The instance that has now been revealed to all Canadians, that alleged sexual assault of the woman in the quarantine facility, that's a federally run facility under the federal mandate through the federal enforcement of rules. It's actually not the most recent system that the Liberals have just brought forward. And then, of course, there's the other alleged sexual assault and extortion of a woman at home complying with the federal quarantine orders by a screening officer.
What do you want? Like, I get that. Like, I appreciate that.
Orders. So here's what we said.
So are you calling for? So what do you want?
What we said last week was the Liberals immediately to suspend the quarantine facility program to get to the bottom of the safety and security issues. And as you said, now there's a whole host of others apparently to do with meeting the essential needs of people who are there so that they can figure out what happened, what the risks are, how many other people are at risk if that's the case, really get to the bottom of what's going on in those facilities, and then tell Canadians exactly what it is that they are going to do to fix it. And unfortunately, it's been 5 days and there's still no clear answers from anybody on any of that. So that's why we moved this motion in Public Safety Committee today.
Okay, so they want to suspend it for concerns. Jack Harris, I'll swing back to Mr. Fergus in a minute. Jack Harris, should quarantine hotel be suspended?
Well, I don't know if we have the evidence to do that. This is a public health measure that's designed to protect people. Obviously the people who are subject to quarantine have to be looked after. And if they've done a lousy job of doing that and mismanaged that up front, then it has to be fixed. We've had one incident in a hotel where a fellow traveler assaulted another person in a hotel. That shows obviously perhaps a lack of security, and people are complaining, as you pointed out earlier in the show, about the lack of adequate amenities in these hotels. If they're going to do this, they have to do it right, and people have to be safe. So we're looking into that. We will have the Minister of Public Safety, we'll have the Minister of Public Health before the committee, and we need to know exactly how they are operating these operations. But they are necessary. They were late in coming, but they have obviously been put together fairly hastily.
Mr. Fergus, there are real concerns. And even if some Canadians have no sympathy for people who are complaining about cold food or long lineups because, they've been sitting at home and missed, the death of their loved one. This is about safety, not suffering. But the reviews on these quarantine hotels are bad. Is your government considering suspending it? Or if not, how will you fix them to make them safer and better managed?
Well, thank you, Evan. And let me remind your viewers that we put these measures in place to protect Canadians. We started in March by putting together the quarantine system. Now we've moved up to making sure that people who are crossing the borders via air travel, that they will be have a test done beforehand. They will be quarantined in a hotel, and then they will have, as a result of those tests, then they'll be allowed to return to continue their quarantining at home. This is very important. Obviously, when we were talking about sexual assault, this is a very serious and unacceptable situation. Police were called. The minister has asked for an investigation, and we're working with the Hotel Association to making sure that people are provided the service that is necessary for them to quarantine properly in the hotels.
Okay, so just tell us, so why wasn't that up and running earlier? You know, bad reservation system, people are waiting on, just for the basics, you know, give them a meal when they get to a hotel. When will this be fixed, and why wasn't it done earlier?
Well, clearly we're working in a situation that's been very, very difficult under trying circumstances. We brought in these tougher measures to making sure that we're protecting Canadians from the risk of spreading any of the variants which have come from the UK or from South Africa. There are adjustments to be made, and those adjustments are being made, and we're working with the Hotel Association to provide the level of service that would be appropriate.
Evan, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Shannon
Stubbs. Jump in here. The instance that, the reason we're all here together talking about this, and thank you so much, Evan, for following up on it, and for the colleagues who supported the Conservative motion in public safety, is really not to do with the Hotel Association or hotels, because they are not charges that law enforcement clearly believe they had sufficient evidence to go ahead and make based on the more recent program that are run by hotels. This is what is so key and why we've called for action. They happened under the federal facilities run by the federal government. The only involvement of hotels in that circumstance was literally providing the property. So that's why, without a shadow of a doubt, we MPs who are calling for action in response to the stories about the charges, and now obviously the other issues that we've been hearing are happening in those facilities, is because it is clearly, without a doubt, the federal responsibility, because they were federally run facilities with federally charged overseers and administrators within the facilities. And so that's why it's really critical for the federal government to get all officials and all aspects of the government involved in that program onto this urgent situation.
I guess the question is,
by Friday of this week, if we can, possibly meet with the ministers and with the officials involved, because we do want to treat this as an urgent situation because people are concerned about it, and rightly so.
Right.
Yeah, again, you got to balance concerns here. You got to balance the need to stop the variants, and you got to the need to keep people safe. Just because I have 2 minutes here, I just really want to just quickly get the MP's view on news about AstraZeneca. Very good news that it's been approved. We all want that. 500,000 doses are going to come this week. But, Mr. Fergus, there are concerns about the efficacy of it, 62%. And today, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization will not recommend the vaccine to adults age 65 and up. How are provinces supposed to interpret that? Should they be giving that vaccine at all to people 65 and up? It's a recommendation, but it's not a rule. How do you interpret that?
Well, it's not very helpful, I have to say, because most provinces have agreed that they would start providing vaccines to those who are starting off older than 80 and working their way down. Well, then the AstraZeneca is not necessarily going to be the choice of people who are want to get vaccine and want to have the proper protection. So is that going to be wasted? Is it going to be used for other purposes? Or it doesn't give a lot of confidence, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's Jack Harris. Let me go back to you, Mr. Fergus. Go ahead.
I thought maybe I misheard. I thought that question was to me. No, look, the way it's working, we are going to depend upon the advice of our experts, and the experts are going to determine the actions of the government. If they're recommending that this is should be used for age 65 and over because it's not as efficacious as the other drugs, then that would certainly make sense, and we'll follow that advice.
Right. I just want to be clear. I don't want to confuse people. The recommendation for 65 and up is not about efficacy. That is about, there's not a lot of data on that from AstraZeneca. The efficacy is for anyone. It's apparently 62% versus 94%. I know there's some issues there. But Shannon Stubbs, look, doctors are still recommending people take the AstraZeneca vaccine. But what do you make of the fact that it's not recommended for adults 65 and up because of a data issue?
Well, I think I would say people probably have to take their advice from their doctors. And just in a general comment, here's what I would say. I mean, here we are, Canada, so far behind the other developed countries in the world. And I know you've talked about this on your show lots, Evan. Canadians still standing in lineups and unsure when they're either going to get first doses or second doses from any provider. Overall, it's been a massive failure, and it really is the responsibility of the federal government to fix the situation, to be clear with Canadians, and then ultimately, of course, as always ends up being the case, will fall on provinces to make their decisions.
Right. You know, just to be fair, this is going to be 24 million doses of AstraZeneca, which is by any stretch a good thing when they finally arrive. Okay, I got to leave it there, Mr. Fergus, Ms. Stubbs, and Mr. Harris. Great to have the three of you here. I really appreciate the conversations. Thank you so much.